The rain came down hard on the cobblestone streets of Yorkshire, blurring the outlines of the old stone cottages and washing the scent of autumn leaves into the cold night air. The lamps flickered against the mist, casting a golden hue over the otherwise quiet town square. Ethan Ward, a 32-year-old entrepreneur with a tailored navy coat and a leather briefcase in hand, hurried across the street. He had just left a tense investors meeting. Another rejection, another reminder that his dreams of launching a countryside tech hub might never take off. As he turned into a narrow alley shortcut, his polished shoes splashed into a puddle. He muttered a curse under his breath, but what made him stop wasn't the rain. It was the soft, broken sound of a girl's humming. Curled up under the broken awning of an abandoned bakery was a young woman wrapped in a torn blanket. Her chestnut hair was damp, her cheeks pale, and yet there was something strangely serene about her as she hugged her knees and tried to stay warm. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't the type to stop for strangers. His world was business meetings, spreadsheets, and chasing investors. But there was something in her voice, in the quiet resilience of that broken melody, that rooted him to the spot. "Excuse me," he said softly. The girl lifted her head. Her eyes, startlingly emerald green, locked on his. For a moment, Ethan felt as if she could see straight through him. "Yes?" Her voice was cautious but not hostile. "You shouldn't be out here, it's freezing." She gave a small smile, the kind that was both defiant and heartbreaking. "And where else would you suggest I go? Hotels don't exactly hand out rooms for free." Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair, torn between walking away and doing something entirely out of character. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara," she whispered. That name settled into his chest like a chord struck on an old piano. Haunting, beautiful, unforgettable. Ethan found himself kneeling beside her. "Look, Clara, I can at least get you something warm to eat." She eyed him suspiciously. "You're not, expecting something in return, are you?" The question caught him off guard. "No, I'm not like that. I don't like leaving someone in the rain." After a long silence, she nodded. Minutes later, they were sitting in the back corner of a small countryside cafe. Clara cupped the steaming mug of tea like it was the most precious thing in the world. Ethan ordered soup and bread for her, watching the way her hands trembled before she slowly steadied herself. "So, what's your story?" he asked. Clara hesitated, her eyes darting toward the window. Finally, she spoke. "I used to live in London. My mom passed away 2 years ago. Dad, well, let's just say he wasn't the kind of man to stick around. I tried to survive, but rent was impossible, and the only jobs I found didn't pay enough. One night I had to choose between food and rent. I chose food, and here I am." Ethan listened, something shifting inside him. He had always seen the world in numbers, profits, losses, projections. But Clara's story stripped those numbers away and revealed the raw, painful truth of life outside his carefully calculated world. Clara added softly, "People think homelessness means laziness. But the truth is, sometimes life just kicks you when you're already down." Her words lingered in his mind long after he dropped her back at the shelter that night. And that night, for the first time in years, Ethan couldn't sleep. The following morning, Ethan found himself distracted during a boardroom meeting in Leeds. Investors were talking. Charts and graphs flashed across the projector screen, but all he could see in his mind was Clara's emerald green eyes under the flickering lamplight. He told himself it was guilt. After all, he had dropped her at a shelter. And what kind of life was that for someone her age? But deep down, it wasn't just guilt. It was curiosity. That evening, against his better judgment, Ethan returned to the same shelter. He scanned the crowded hall filled with thin mattresses and second-hand blankets, and there she was, Clara, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketching something on a crumpled piece of paper with a stub of a pencil. "Clara," he said, almost too eagerly. She looked up in surprise. "You again? Did you lose your way to your fancy office?" Ethan chuckled. "Maybe, or maybe I just wanted to check if you were okay." Her expression softened slightly. She set down the paper, but he caught a glimpse of it before she tucked it away. It was a beautifully detailed sketch of the Yorkshire skyline, every spire and roof drawn with incredible precision. "You draw?" he asked. Clara shifted uncomfortably. "Just something to pass the time." "That wasn't just doodling," Ethan insisted. "That was talent." Her cheeks flushed, and she changed the subject quickly. "So, Mr. Businessman, why are you here?" Ethan hesitated, then confessed, "Honestly, I don't know. I can't stop thinking about what you said yesterday, about life kicking you down. I've been kicked too, Clara. Just in different ways." She tilted her head, studying him like she didn't quite believe it. "You? You've got money, a suit and a car that probably costs more than most houses here." He smiled faintly. "Money doesn't mean peace. I've been trying to build something that could bring jobs and hope back to towns like this. But the investors keep saying no. They think I'm dreaming too big." Clara's eyes lit up. "Maybe they're just blind. Sometimes the best ideas are the ones no one believes in, until they work." Her words struck him harder than any investor's critique ever had. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept returning. Sometimes with food, sometimes with supplies, sometimes just with conversation. Clara was sharp-witted, funny, and far more insightful than most people in his polished business circles. One rainy evening, he brought her a notebook and a set of pencils. "For your sketches," he said. Clara's eyes widened as if he had handed her a treasure chest. She traced the cover with trembling fingers before whispering, "No one's given me a gift in years." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then let this be the first of many." That night, as she drew, he sat beside her, watching the lines of rooftops and old stone walls appear on the page. For the first time in months, Ethan felt grounded. But not everyone was pleased. One evening, as he walked Clara back to the shelter, a rough-looking man stepped out of the shadows. His clothes were ragged, but his eyes burned with hostility. "Well, well," the man sneered. "Clara's found herself a rich little savior." Clara stiffened, her hand gripping Ethan's arm. "Don't, Peter, just don't." Peter laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than the rest of us, Clara? You think he's going to whisk you away in his shiny car and save you? Newsflash, darling. Men like him don't save girls like us." Ethan stepped forward. "Back off. She doesn't owe you anything." For a tense moment, Peter looked like he might strike, but then he spat on the ground and disappeared back into the shadows. Clara exhaled shakily. "You shouldn't get involved with me. My life, it's complicated." Ethan looked at her, his voice steady. "Maybe I want complicated. Maybe complicated is exactly what I need." Ethan couldn't shake the encounter with Peter. The man's words lingered in his head long after he had dropped Clara at the shelter. That night he tossed and turned in his sleek London apartment, his mind racing. Why did Peter say girls like us? What was Clara hiding? The next day, Ethan returned to the shelter earlier than usual. He found Clara sitting on the stone steps outside, clutching her notebook. Her usually sharp wit was replaced with a troubled silence. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, "You shouldn't keep coming here. It'll only get you into trouble." "Trouble doesn't scare me," he replied firmly. "But you shutting me out does. Tell me, Clara, what are you so afraid of?" Clara looked into his eyes for a long moment, as if searching for an answer. Finally, she sighed and opened her notebook. Inside wasn't just sketches of rooftops and landscapes. There were detailed drawings of faces, dozens of them. "Who are these people?" Ethan asked. Her voice was barely audible. "My past." Later that evening, under the dim glow of a pub's lantern where Ethan insisted they talk privately, Clara told him her story. She had once lived in York with her mother, who worked night shifts just to keep food on the table. When her mother fell ill, Clara dropped out of school to care for her. After her mother's passing, Clara was left alone, and the house was taken by the bank. She fell in with the wrong crowd, kids who promised her family, protection, belonging. That's where she met Peter. He wasn't always cruel. At first he had been her friend. But soon, He and the others dragged her into petty crimes, thefts, and scams. Clara hated it, but leaving wasn't easy. "They said I owed them," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes, "that without them, I wouldn't survive. And maybe they were right. I've been running ever since. That's why I was on the street the night you found me, and why Peter won't let me go." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You don't owe them anything anymore, not as long as I'm here." Clara's lips trembled into the faintest of smiles. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "I do," Ethan said, "and I've never been more certain of anything." The days that followed were filled with stolen moments. Quiet dinners, long walks along the river air, Clara sketching while Ethan worked on his laptop beside her. The line between their worlds blurred, and Ethan realized with every passing moment that he wasn't just helping Clara, he was falling in love with her. One evening he surprised her with a train ride to the countryside. As the fields of Yorkshire stretched endlessly outside the window, Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "This feels unreal," she whispered. Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes the best things do." For a brief moment, it was just them, the businessman and the runaway girl, two broken souls finding something whole in each other. But reality soon caught up. A week later, Ethan returned to the shelter only to find Clara missing. Panic gripped him as he searched the streets, calling her name. Finally, near an abandoned warehouse by the railway, he heard voices. "Thought you could just run off, did you?" Peter's voice sneered. Ethan's blood ran cold. He crept closer and saw Clara backed against a wall, Peter looming over her with two other men. "You're ours, Clara," Peter growled. "You don't just walk away." Ethan's instinct roared to life. He stepped out from the shadows. "She's not yours, not anymore." Peter turned, smirking. "The rich boy again. You think money can buy you everything, even her?" Ethan clenched his fists. "I don't need to buy her. She chose me." Clara's eyes widened, fear and hope colliding. Peter's smirk vanished. He lunged forward, but Ethan was quicker than he expected. A struggle broke out, gritty, desperate. Ethan wasn't a fighter, but adrenaline and determination fueled him. He managed to shove Peter back, shouting at Clara, "Run!" Clara hesitated only a second before grabbing Ethan's arm. Together, they sprinted through the darkened alleys until they reached the glow of the main street. Breathless, Clara collapsed against him, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Ethan cupped her face, his own breath ragged. "Because, Clara, you're not just someone I found on the street. You're the reason I feel alive again. I won't let anyone take you away." Her lips parted, and in that moment, heart racing, danger still lingering, she kissed him. And for Ethan, it was the only truth that mattered. The night of their escape left Ethan shaken but more determined than ever. He brought Clara back to his apartment, insisting she stay until it was safe. Clara looked out of the window at the glittering lights of London, a world so different from the damp alleys she had called home. "I don't belong here," she whispered. Ethan moved beside her. "You belong wherever you feel loved. And if you'll let me, I want that place to be with me." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Clara slowly nodded, her eyes shimmering with something she hadn't felt in years: trust. But while Ethan's heart was full, his professional life was unraveling. At work, rumors began to spread. Shareholders questioned his judgment. Why was their sharp, rising entrepreneur suddenly distracted, spotted with a girl from the streets? At a board meeting, his rival, Marcus Hale, sneered across the table. "You're losing focus, Ethan. Bringing questionable company into your life isn't exactly the image of a responsible leader." Ethan clenched his jaw but kept his composure. "My private life is not up for discussion. What matters is results, and our results are stronger than ever." But doubt had been planted. Ethan knew that to protect Clara, he had to be 2 steps ahead, both in business and in the fight against her past. Meanwhile, Clara wrestled with her own demons. She wandered through Ethan's apartment, feeling out of place among the marble countertops and polished wood floors. One night she confessed, "You've given me so much, Ethan. And all I've given you is trouble. What if Peter comes back? What if you lose your company because of me? Ethan took her hands. Clara, listen to me. Money, business, reputation, none of it matters if I lose you. You didn't bring trouble into my life. You brought meaning. Her throat tightened with emotion. No one had ever said words like that to her. She wanted to believe them, to believe him. But Peter wasn't finished. One evening, Ethan returned home to find a letter slipped under his door. The handwriting was jagged, threatening. You can keep playing hero, but we both know she belongs to us. Pay, or she pays. Ethan's pulse hammered. He couldn't ignore it. Peter was escalating, and this time Clara's safety was truly at stake. When he showed her the letter, Clara turned pale. They won't stop. Peter will bleed you dry. That's how he works. He won't rest until he destroys you. Ethan tightened his grip on her shoulders. Then we fight back, not with fear, but with truth. Ethan hatched a plan. He began digging into Peter's past, using his business contacts to uncover records of theft, fraud, and blackmail that spanned years. At the same time, Clara found courage she didn't know she had. If you're going to expose him, she said one night, then I'll stand with you. I won't run anymore. Her determination lit a fire in Ethan. He realized that Clara wasn't just someone he was saving. She was his equal, his partner. In the middle of all the chaos, their love grew stronger. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled outside, Clara curled up on the couch with Ethan. She traced her finger along his hand, her voice soft. Do you ever regret meeting me? Ethan kissed the top of her head. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was rich in money, Clara, but empty in life. You changed that. You gave me something worth fighting for. She lifted her gaze to him, and in that quiet moment, their lips met again. Gentle, certain, filled with everything words couldn't say. But even as their love deepened, Ethan knew the storm was far from over. Marcus, his corporate rival, was circling like a vulture, waiting for Ethan to stumble. Peter's threats were becoming bolder, and Clara's past was a shadow that wouldn't stay buried. The question wasn't if danger would strike again, it was when. And when it did, Ethan vowed he would be ready, because nothing, not even the ghosts of Clara's past, could take away what they had built together. The following week felt like walking on thin ice. Ethan carried on with his meetings and business deals, but his mind was always on Clara. She had begun volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others who had faced the same struggles she once endured. Watching her transform filled Ethan with pride, but it also made him more protective than ever. One evening, as they left the shelter together, headlights suddenly flared in the dark. A black car screeched to a stop. 3 men stepped out, one of them Peter. Clara, Peter sneered, his voice dripping with venom. Did you really think you could hide behind this rich fool forever? Clara's breath hitched, but she stood her ground. Ethan stepped in front of her, his jaw set. She's not yours to control anymore, Ethan said firmly. Peter smirked. We'll see about that. She owes me. And if she won't pay, maybe you will. The 2 men with him stepped forward threateningly. Ethan's fists clenched, but before he could act, Clara spoke up, her voice trembling but steady. No, Peter, I don't owe you anything, not anymore. You stole from me, you broke me, but you don't own me. I choose my life now, and it's not with you. For a moment, Peter's grin faltered. Rage twisted across his face. You'll regret this, he spat, then signaled his men to retreat. This isn't over. The car sped off into the night. Back at Ethan's apartment, Clara collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Ethan wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. You were incredible, he whispered. I've never seen you so strong. Tears slid down her cheeks. I was terrified, but I meant every word. I want a future with you, Ethan. No more running. Ethan cupped her face, his own eyes fierce. Then we'll make that future. Together. But deep down, he knew Peter's words weren't empty threats. The man wouldn't stop until he was destroyed, or until he destroyed Clara. Days later, Ethan received a call from his assistant. Sir, there's a problem. Marcus Hale has filed a complaint with the board. He's accusing you of fraud. Ethan froze. Fraud? He hadn't done anything illegal. but Marcus had always envied his rise. Later, Ethan discovered the truth. Peter and Marcus had joined forces. Peter provided fabricated documents of Ethan's finances, while Marcus presented them to the board, hoping to oust him. It was a trap, and it was working. "Ethan, if they believe this, you could lose everything," Clara said, gripping his arm. He looked at her, calm despite the storm. "Then we prove them wrong, and we take both of them down." Ethan gathered evidence he had been compiling for weeks. Peter's criminal record, his blackmail schemes, testimonies from others he had hurt. With Clara's help, they presented it to a trusted lawyer. On the day of the board meeting, Ethan walked in hand with Clara. Marcus smirked, confident in his win. But when Ethan spoke, the room fell silent. "The man providing your so-called evidence is a known criminal. Here are his records: extortion, fraud, assault, and here are the statements of his victims." He laid the documents on the table. Marcus's face paled as whispers filled the room. "And as for you, Marcus," Ethan added, his voice sharp, "collaborating with a criminal to destroy me is more than unethical. It's grounds for dismissal." The board examined the papers. Within minutes, Marcus was stripped of his position, and Peter was officially reported to authorities. That night, Ethan and Clara walked along the Thames, the city lights dancing on the water. For the first time in weeks, they both breathed freely. Clara squeezed his hand. "You risked everything for me." "Why?" Ethan stopped, turning to face her fully. His voice was steady, filled with raw honesty. "Because somewhere along the way, Clara, you became my everything. Money, business, reputation. It all means nothing without you. You didn't just walk into my life. You saved it." Clara's eyes shimmered with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. She threw her arms around him, their lips meeting in a kiss that was tender, fierce, and filled with promise. Months later, Clara stood beside Ethan at a charity gala. No longer the girl hiding in the shadows, she now shone in her own right, confident, radiant, and free. Together they had started a foundation for victims of abuse, giving others the chance Clara once prayed for. As applause filled the hall, Ethan leaned close to her ear. "See, you didn't just make me a millionaire. You made me the richest man alive." Clara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "And you gave me something even greater, freedom and love." And in that moment, under the glow of the chandeliers, they both knew their story had only just begun.